Any of them.
A very, very good evening, 1st of December 2024. We enter the Christmas season. We're here for another Christmas. So that's remarkable, really, from my point of view. For those of you who are new to me, my name is Raj Amir. This is a Sunday night Recusant 9 transmission. These transmissions, I call them transmissions, is basically me sat in the corner of my living room with a computer that's now close to 10 years old and an old camera, and I share information in the main to do with the goings on in Oldham. And as a direct consequence of the work I have done this way, we have taken out three council leaders, three successive council leaders, Sean Fielding, Arood Shah, and then of course Amanda Chadderton. Arood Shah came back into power by moving to Glodick, and then what we did was, as a consequence of our direct campaigning, we reduced the council's majority from once it was, I think it was 46 or 47 of the 60 councillors to now just having 27. Sadly, the work we did not fulfil our aspirations, because 4 of the councillors we helped get elected got into bed with the Labour Party and are now propping up the Labour Party. And I mention their names frequently because I think the people should know. Their names are Brian Hoban from Failsworth, Neil Hindle from Failsworth, both Failsworth East councillors, Mark Ince, we call him Mincy Boy in these parts, from Shaw, and of course his sidekick, who never speaks without his permission, it seems, a councillor, Lisa Navesey, also from Shaw. So those 4 councillors are the reason why the Labour Party still control Oldham. Now, what I wanted to share with you, in fact, no, let me go back a few moments. This is what I've done with this evening's transmission, is I've not just shared it with the Recusant tier, which is those of you support me, very kindly support me with £25 a month, or some of you support me with actually more than that. So I'm very, very grateful. Without your help, this work will stop. I am 100% community funded, and contrary to some claims, I have neither stolen £12 million, nor have I ever seen £12 million. £1,200 a month, and I would be smiling, I think. So we're not even there. So very kindly, without your help, without your support, these transmissions would not take place. But what I've also done this week is I've shared it with the tier down. So I think that's the radical tier. Is that radical tier who support me with £10 a month? I think most people, I don't think, well, it sounds a considerable amount. I don't think £2.50 a week for what you get from me is in any way onerous. You'd pay more for a newspaper, let's face it. You'd pay more for a magazine every week. You'd pay more for a coffee every week. So I was hoping, and I'm still hopeful, ever hopeful, that we'll get more subscribers, but I wanted to expand this week for a number of reasons. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. Thank you more than anything. I normally put up all your messages whilst we have the countdown, but this week the countdown was finishing whilst Gary sent his message. So Gary, good evening. Yes, indeed, the Greater Manchester Police Appreciation Society. Why not? Let me fix. I don't like where that is. Let me just lift that up slightly so I can see it as well. Greater Manchester Police Appreciation Society. Ian Andre, of course, Chadderton South, has been out campaigning with me in Chadderton South for a long time. We helped get Robert Barnes over the line, didn't we, Ian, when we first properly met face to face in Chadderton South when he was a Conservative councillor. Shame, really, that Robert went the way he did. And of course Louise, who joined me on this journey whilst we were well on our journey. I remember when Louise's name started coming up and I was looking at some of the comments, I'm thinking this woman is a very intelligent woman, and of course she is. She's a very, very intelligent woman, and I'm blessed to have someone like Louise in my life. And I look and reflect on this, and I think many of you I had never met beforehand. People like Julie, for instance, or David Nestad, Denise. I'd never met Dot, Susan White, Tony Martin, and I don't think it'd be unreasonable of me to consider all of you as as friends now, if not more. So I reflect back on, despite all of the challenges I've endured, we've collectively endured. I think we've built a very strong community, and it's something we should treasure. So a very, very good evening to all of you who are here this evening with me. Now, I have quite a bit to get through. It's higgledy-piggledy, but I think you'll appreciate it. Now, the first thing I want to share with you is I put something out on Patreon. As you can see, I'm using Facebook less and less, but I put something out on Patreon. And what I put out on Patreon was, he says, looking at his work, yeah, it's to do with councillors' allowances. Now, I want to share something with you. This is what the councillors get paid in Oldham, and all of them get 10,922. The leader gets 39,000, I think, on top. The deputy leader gets 22. And it's all a public document on the council's webpage. You can see it. And if you sit on various district leads, you get an extra 6,500. The deputy executive member gets an extra 8,000. If you're a chair of a committee, so for instance, if you're chair of the planning committee, which is what Mincy Boy now is, he gets just under an extra 9,830. GMP scrutiny panels. If you attend the meeting, you get £134. If you're a substitute member, you get 5. And it's okay. Now, I want to share this first. I think it's important I share this bit first. I have no issue with councillors being paid. I think there are a number of councillors in this town who do exceptional work at a grassroots level. And having someone like Moyeb, Mr. P, we call him Mr. P, he was a councillor for a time when I was younger, a close friend of mine. I witnessed firsthand the amount of work he would do above and beyond. 2 in the morning, people would be knocking on his doors to sign passport forms. I've had this issue, that issue, I've seen it. So I have no issue with decent councillors, in the main grassroots councillors, earning an income. If I had my way, and I'm clear on this, I would reduce the number of councillors per ward from 3 to 2. Of course, turkeys don't vote for Christmas, and whilst they've played with the idea, they never will. But I would reduce it from 3 to 2. Because, on one hand, I would increase the basic allowance. And from my perspective, from my experience, by increasing the basic allowance, we would have the opportunity to see a higher calibre of councillors come in. So that's my position on that. Now, historically, and again, I think it's good that I think it's essential that I set the scene. Historically, members' allowances went up every year, every 2 years, or whatever. But there was an independent panel of sorts, and that independent panel wasn't really independent. I think it was last one was led by the borough solicitor, Paul Entwistle, I think, who's now gone. And they would recommend some pay rises. And those pay rises would ordinarily be presented to the full council and they'd be voted through. Now, I'm pretty sure I've not dreamt that up. I've not imagined that. And I've seen those meetings in the past. Now, correct me. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure some of you have seen those meetings as well in the past, where the councillor's remuneration is an agenda item on a main council meeting and they vote it through. Now, that's how it used to happen. Maybe it still does, I don't know. But that's how it used to happen. The next thing that used to happen in terms of councillors' allowances is that pay rise would ordinarily happen. Well, it should happen at one point of the year, shouldn't it? And naturally, that point of the year is after May, because councillors get elected in a May election, and they're up for re-election in a May election. So whilst you have a calendar year, that's from January till December, you have a financial year from the 1st of April to the 30th of March, you have a school academic year from the 1st of September to the 31st of August, an elected members year, a councillor's year, is what? Should be what? The 4th of May? Or the 1st of May perhaps? To the 31st of, the 30th of April? Makes sense? Am I being in any way presenting information that doesn't make sense to any of you? So a councillor's allowance, when it goes up, it should go up in May. And in the past, when it's gone up, a recommendation has gone to the council, full council, from their own independent remuneration board, or whatever it's called, and they've signed. They've made a series of recommendations and the council has voted on it. I'm looking at my phone now because I'm seeing if any councillor who's watching this has texted me to say whether I've got it wrong or not. No. Charlie Peters has just texted me though, so that's all right. I'll get to that later. So lo and behold, how bizarre is it that the council send out an email? And I'll read the email. So the existing councillors, they send out an email. And the email went out on Friday, November the 29th. And apparently, councillors are now getting a pay rise independent of the process that they've got a pay rise before. And the basic allowance is going up by £1,290. £1,290. Now, so we're clear, and I'll bring this back up. £1,290 if it goes up, and this is what it currently is. So ignore the members' allowance is 24.25 because that's not the case. It's going up halfway through a year, bizarrely. It's going up by £1,290. So that's more than 10%, isn't it? Because £1,092.20 is 10%. Now, I don't know yet what the rest of it's going up by. So whether the leader's uplift is also by 10%, so it goes up by 3,900. And I think in a open and transparent council, in a council, Tony, that isn't cash-strapped, or even is cash-strapped, that information should be immediately published on the Oldham Council webpage under News. Because it's important news, because councillors' allowances are paid for by you through council tax. There's no government grant that pays for this. Councillors' allowances are paid for by you. And I accept this, Julie, in terms of rip-off, and I accept this, Denise, in terms of greed. But I also want to reiterate that in terms of my experience, that there are councillors out there that are worth the weight in gold. Maybe not in Oldham, but I've come across very decent councillors, even in Oldham. And I've come across councillors in Oldham, witnessed it with my own eyes. I'm not, in the same way I said last week, I think I'm not one of those of the week before, I'm not one of those just to indiscriminately bash the police. I'm not one of those to indiscriminately bash politicians. I'm supported by politicians, councillors, and those who want to be councillors or those who were councillors. They won't put a message up here because of what it'll mean, Excuse me, I made myself a nice cup of tea. So I'm just have a slurp. But there are decent councillors. And my position again is I would reduce councillors from 3 to 2 and uplift the salary even further to get a higher quality of councillor. So things like this becomes a rarity. So that is my first point. In a climate of a council briefing the press of the risk of bankruptcy, going to the government and crying that they haven't got enough money, how can you, at this time in particular, award yourselves a pay rise? At a time when even if you did award yourself a pay rise, this is not the time of the year in which you would award yourself a pay rise. I'm not blaming any of the opposition councillors. I'm not even blaming the Labour Party councillors, but a decision like this would not take place without the involvement of the leader, the chief executive. Oh, I forgot. The leader hired her mate to be the chief executive. Her drinking partner. The borough solicitor. Oh, I forgot. The previous chief executive, who still paid 1 day a week, £40,000, obscene, hired Bogotoff on an interim basis to be the borough solicitor. Do you see how incestuous it is and why people get angry over it? And decent councillors, in my opinion, have choices to make. Now, some will openly issue a statement and say, I refuse my pay rise. Please give it to X charity and Y charity. And I think Councillor Lewis Quigg has issued a statement, to the best of my information, that he wants the money from his pay rise shared equally between the Royton branch of the Royal British Legion and Dr. Kershaw's hospice. I have no issue with that. Dr. Kershaw's, I do, and I would, and I continue to do, because I witnessed firsthand what they did for my mother, and I will be ever indebted to them, like so many families from across all of the communities in Oldham who are indebted to Dr. Kershaw's. There was indeed a councillor at the Egyptian Room this week when we were there, Gary. And there was plenty of weight there, wasn't there? So I'm not sure he'd be worth his weight in anything. There are other councillors who I know who quietly go about their business, donating a lot of money. They'll go to the meals, the charity meals, even when the charity meals aren't in their own wards. Pay £50 for a ticket, buy some raffle tickets on top, and support. I've seen, and I'm not picking on him, I've seen Dave Arnott at meetings like that. I've seen Pam Byrne, who I'm not a fan of, go to a whole host of events regularly. I'm sure she incurs an expense. These aren't Labour Party MPs. They don't claim the £50 back or the £20 back for the meals or the raffle tickets. Sam Al-Hamdani works tirelessly through his ward. Agreed, Tony. But what does it look like, people? What does it look like for a cash-strapped council pleading poverty to award itself a 10% plus pay rise at a time of the year when it ordinarily would not award itself a pay rise, bypassing the existing systems and processes through which those pay rises were historically ratified? How does that look? And of course, if I wasn't sharing this information with you, would you have known that this had took place? Because there isn't a press release on Oldham Council's webpage. I Love Oldham hasn't issued anything on its Facebook page. It's not good with optics, is it? So you see councillors, some of them who aren't wealthy, who do good work, find themselves in a unenviable position. Do they take the pay rise? Do they reject the pay rise? Do they take it and quietly redistribute it as they see fit in their ward? Do they put it in their pocket? I know. I can guess who will do what, as can you, I'm sure. But this isn't a good look. So let me show you something else. And I think one of you should submit a Freedom of Information request, saying based upon news that Oldham councillors are to receive an uplift in their allowances, in their salary, from 10,922 by 1,290 taking what, to over £12,000, you would want to know what the uplift is for all of the positions as per the member allowances page on their council webpage. So is it just a basic uplift for that on that one tier? I don't think so. I think there'll be an uplift across the board. And they've hidden it from you, which you should be angry about because you're the council taxpayer who pays for this. It is taxed. It is taxed. For those of them who do pay tax, it is taxed. So, let me bring you up something else. So you can see it properly. Hidden away in the council webpage, of course, is how much each of the councillors claimed in 2022, 23 and 2023, 2024. You can see I've clicked 2023, 24. This is last year. Shoaib Akhtar, 12,621. That would have been the basic allowance. It says here, not me, you can see the total payments. So maybe he applied for some meetings he went to on top or expenses, because the basic allowance, remember, is 10,922. So people like Sam Al-Hamdani claimed 15,150. Christine Adams, the minimum amount, 10,922. Dave Arnott, the minimum amount, 10,922. Sandra Ball, the minimum amount, 10,922. Do you see a pattern here? Then you have people like Mohan Ali. Remember, Mohan Ali has got a job in the civil service. He earns a lot of money, and this is the same Mohan Ali who refused to turn up for Remembrance Sunday a number of years ago. A basic allowance of 32,282. You've seen him in the council chamber and his performance. 32,282. Stephen Bashworth, his allowance was uplifted because they needed to take care of him, so he was appointed chair of MyoCare, where he received an additional £10,000. So he received 20,800. Well, just under £10,000, but let's round it up. Marie Bashforth, as a deputy executive member, on top of her basic allowance, earned just under £20,000. So you can see between them they were earning £40,000 on top of their work. Ros Birch, who now works for something to do with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, remember we got rid of her, deputy executive member, 19,271. Yes, indeed, plus a barrel or two Ian, when it comes to Barrelgate. And we have had some fun on this journey, haven't we? We have had some fun on this journey. Barbara Brownridge, 32,282. Dr. Zahid Chauhan with his mayor allowance, 28,339. Although I do understand that he gives most of that back. I think he donates the entirety of his mayoral allowance. Josh Charters. When a council is paying an individual like Josh Charters just under £20,000, you know it's a joke. When a councillor is paying an individual such as Angela Cosgrove £18,399 because she's also the district lead. This is the Angela Cosgrove who hardly ever says a word. And it is to the shame of the Conservatives that they have failed to remove her in St James's simply because they've not put the work in. If you've got one councillor over the line in Beth Sharp, you should have got the second one over the line and the third one over the line, and you haven't because you've not put the work in. When Josh Charters gets elected, you know you've done something wrong. When Angela Cosgrove gets elected, you know you've done something wrong. Peter Davis, again, this is a district lead, 17,801. So Angela Cosgrove is claiming for expenses on top because the basic allowance and the district lead amount is the same. It gets up to 17,804. I don't know what else Angela Cosgrove has claimed for. It should be on this document, but it isn't. But does that surprise anyone? Peter Dean. That's the man whose suit doesn't fit him, who stands up and bumbles nonsense. 32,282. Christopher Goodwin, 32,282. And again, look at this. Hazel Gloucester, she's now no longer with us. A loss, in my opinion, 10,922, the minimum. Louis Hamlet, I think he's a decent ward councillor, 10,922. Garth Harkness, 10,922. Holly Harrison, who's been promoted fastly, yeah? She's the chair of the Standards Committee. She's a substitute member of GM Scrutiny Board, 12,242. She's also a full-time teacher. And please, someone who knows where she teaches, do get in touch with me and let me know which school she teaches at, because I will write a letter of complaint asking them what it's like to hire a liar. Because she was exposed at the last council meeting as a liar. Mincy Boy, 10,922, but this was before he got in bed with Shah. Hindle, 10,922 before he got in bed with Shah. Brian Hobin, 10,922 before he got in bed with Shah. Of course, a Pakistani would be chair of licensing. Why does that not surprise me? Sajid Hussain, £21,602. Now, I don't think they can work in Oldham. Unless I've got it wrong. I always thought if you work for the local authority, or maybe they get round it by saying they work for the Academy Trust rather than the local authority. Mohammed Islam, 20,000 because he's a deputy executive member. Sorry, 19,113. I'm rounding up. Abdul Jabbar, £33,262. Colin McLaren, who's the chair of 2 scrutiny boards, gets 24,461. You see why these people are angry at me and what I've done to them? Shahid Mushtaq, 35,558. Now, these allowances are on top of the dodgy deals that any of them may have. It's on top of their business interests with their brothers or their cousins or their wives or whatever, where they're buying or trying to buy public land or involved in the sale of public land at knockdown prices. God knows what goes on at the other end of that. Ali Salamat, that's Akil Salamat, convicted of benefit fraud, is a district lead on 17,937. Oh my God. Arud Shah. Do you see it? You pay Arud Shah £50,239. £50,239. Graham Sheldon, as leader of the minority opposition, gets 22,722. Sorry, and so it goes on. Elaine Taylor, 40,233. I'm sorry, I'm going to take it there. If you're paying her £40,233 on top of whatever she earns doing whatever else she earns doing, I expect to see her better dressed in a council meeting. And dare I say it, maybe brush her hair before she comes into the council meeting as well. Howard Sykes. Thank you, Denise. Before someone calls me a misogynist, I can say, well, another woman said it as well. Gary, what I will do with this is I will screen grab it and I'll share it on Patreon. So don't worry about it. I'll screen grab it and share it on Patreon. Now, this is why I'm disappointed in Howard Sykes with what's gone on. He's the opposition leader. Oh, look, last year he got an allowance also from Transport for Greater Manchester, TFGM. £30,170. Then you've got the likes of, Max and Diane Williamson. No. You're paying the council leader £50,000. You have a right to know if the council has awarded her a pay rise, and if so, how much, by. Because this is information in the public interest, and this is information that an open and transparent council should be sharing anyway. I can see why Ruja Sherjan is upset. She was, we got rid of her at the last election, 20,940. Now, what the council should do is also publish online every receipt, every expense claim form for each of the councillors. So you can see for yourself if someone's claimed for a meeting at a shisha bar, for instance, or a chicken shop. pit stop. But it doesn't. Open and transparent, remember? Public money, remember? Your money, every penny should be accounted for. There should be an audit trail for every penny. How much of this is anyone of you disagreeing with? I don't think any of you will. I don't think any councillor will. But the awarding of a pay rise in November, it's gone out in this month's payroll, or it's going out in this month's payroll in December, I think. And they're claiming it's to do with the national scales, the NJC, so some national body has increased their salaries, but no, it doesn't work like that. I know it doesn't, they know it doesn't. Just because they say something doesn't make it true. We know that. Just because you say something doesn't make it true. We've been here before. In the past, they voted through the pay rises. Why are they not voting through the pay rises this time? Or was there a vote that I missed? I'm sure I watched the last council meeting. Was there a vote that I missed? Tell me, please. Maybe Arud Shah got a car allowance, a special car allowance after her last one got blown up. They should be posting this online. They should be sharing this information. And you, me and everyone else has a right to know how much the leader of the council gets, because there's a discrepancy, isn't there? Only by going and looking and finding the paperwork behind all of this do I know that out from Oldham Council directly, Arud Shah earned last year £50,239. If you went on the web page, if you went on the council's web page, you would believe that the leader of the council, including the combined authority element, only earned £39,318. It's wrong. And I urge the councillors who are here not to get embarrassed. I know many of you do good work, and I'm grateful because many of you support me. No. But you should stand up in a council meeting and ask the question. Why is this pay rise in November/December? What happened to the committee that approved pay rises or recommended pay rises? What happened to the council vote where pay rises were approved? Because is that not what democracy is? Decision making. Will you vote on it? And of course this year, and they'll have to publish the figures, and I'll get the figures for 24-25 once it's over and done with. They won't like it. Bogatov won't like it, but Bogatov can buzz off, can't he? I will publish how much directly Mincy Boy got, his sidekick, and of course Hindle and the convicted fraudster Brian Hoban. And then I'll leave it to all of you to decide if there was an uplift, whether you consider that uplift to be a sweetener, let's say. Okay. Let's move on. I've got an envelope here. I wanted to show you. Arrived in the post this week. These envelopes from this person, I don't know who it is, by the way, arrives. I reckon I get one every 3 or 4 months. And I'll open it so you can see it. It arrives like this with my name and address on it. Printed out. Badly photocopied or printed out. Never signed. I've no idea who sends it. They clearly have an agenda. But there's tidbits of information in these that I've used in the past. I wanted to share it with you so you can see it. I will screen grab all of it, or scan all of it actually, tomorrow morning. And I will put it up on Patreon. So all of you can see it who are on Patreon, you know, in terms of, again, I know it's £1, and I know some of you object to it, but it's £1. And it allows me to be able to do things like this that I can't do on Facebook in the way I want to, because I'll get arrested, and it's not worth any amount of your pounds for that to happen. And I'll share it, and I'm not saying I believe everything written in here or anything like that, but I think one bit of it struck a chord. Now, a lot of it is to do with Shelley Kipling, Arud Shah, Harry Cafferel. So it's clearly someone within the council. It gives me extensive information I've got before, but it goes over it again, of how Harry Cafferel has earned very well out of everywhere else he's been before he came here, via parting handshakes, inverted quotes. And you can see yourself, you'll be able to see yourself. But there's a page at the end where it talks about Howard Sykes. And of course, I'm trying to make sense of why Howard Sykes did not call an extraordinary council meeting. Because to me, it's unfathomable. You wouldn't have voted, why didn't you call a meeting? To say to the council officers, you're not in charge, we are, we voted for this, we voted this through. I would have. You've just won a vote. It's the first vote anyone's won against the Labour Council since we started. You've landed a punch, in boxing term. You then just back off. And I'll read this now. I don't know if it's true or not. But I'll read this now, so it's time stamped. And should we need to, we can revisit it in months, or perhaps a year or two's time. The role of Howard Sykes. You do something for me, I do something for you. You cover me and I cover you. Simple as that. Money and reputation. Incidentally, due to retire in 2 local elections, will be nominated for a gong. So I imagine that means knighthood. For services to local government. All looks respectable, no one knows, and we are all happy, right? You might ask how this happens. Wire Shah, sorry, there's a black mark for it, so I can't really see it sometimes. Wire Shah got such an absolute grip on councillors. Kipling and Cafferel breach private data and information. Suited her, laced with Wilby and others, blah blah blah. Grand game between Shah and Kipling, surrounding themselves with weak suckers and greedy, immoral people. I think whoever this person is has a clear issue with Shah, Kipling, and that inner hierarchy in Oldham Council. The more I read this, the more I think it's someone senior within Oldham Council sending me stuff in the post, stamped. And I know this individual is sending this information to others as well in the opposition. Maybe you're one of them who gets these letters. But it appears that this inside information is that Howard Sykes' endgame here is a gong. Knighthood. I'm not not saying I believe that for 1 minute. All I'm sharing with you is the information I've received, and what I'm sharing with you is still my inability to understand what's gone on and why he hasn't spoken out. It can't be for the few £1,000 uplift he gets from Transport for Greater Manchester in his allowances. It can't be for that. Surely not. Why did he support the secondment of Harry Caffrell and keeping him for 1 day a week for £40,000? What on earth is he going to do? Has he come in 1 day a week? I don't think so. And the backdoor appointment of Shelley Kipling. Why would he support that? Even his party disagreed with him. Well, if you're one of those councillors from his party listening to this, perhaps you know more than I do. Is there a gong in the background? Moving on. We've got a meeting a week on Thursday where Andy Burnham is coming to Oldham. I asked some of you to register, some of you did, most of you didn't. I asked those of you to register to speak to me beforehand so we can sort a question out. None of you did. Absolutely fine. My first call would be to every opposition councillor, particularly the independents, the genuine independents, even the ones I have no time for. Opportunities for you to represent those who voted for you, those who pay your wages, those who are paying you 10% pay rise. Opportunity to resent them, to represent them. Sorry, not resent, represent them. I'm sure you resent many of them. To represent them with someone as powerful as Andy Burnham. A few and far between. You have a responsibility, dare I say a duty, to attend this meeting a week on Thursday and not sit there sucking your thumb, but to attend that meeting and ask Andy Burnham, challenge him on issues that he has power over that affect the communities that you represent. For the £12,000 a year you get, minimum, each and every one of you has a responsibility to attend that meeting and to question the Greater Manchester Mayor. Now, of course, if you were to ask me what I think you should question him on, first and foremost, it would be to do with CSE. It would be, first, how does he feel that the council, having seen his report, have identified shortcomings in it and were forced to write to the government for a public inquiry? Does that not undermine him, his credibility? Because it proves that his report was a cover-up. If Brian Hoban claims, if there's any truth in Brian Hoban's claims of this being his life mission, bullshit. But if there was any truth to that, he would go and challenge Andy Burnham. He would also challenge Andy Burnham as to whether or not he supported a public inquiry and why he did not add his name to the call from a council for a public inquiry. Of course, Hoban won't, because Hoban knows which side is a sausage roll. Do you butter a sausage roll? I don't know. Maggie Hurley and the Royton Independents got elected on a mandate, a very clear mandate, that included withdrawal from Greater Manchester Combined Authority. We don't want to be we don't want our town, our borough, to have decisions imposed on us from a Greater Manchester mayor. Of course, once she was elected, that pledge disappeared. Like her support for me disappeared. But she should go and challenge him. Will she? I doubt it. Mark Wilkinson should go. Sandra Ball should go. And if anything, if I was from Failsworth, I'd go and ask him a question specifically to do with Failsworth and the challenges it faces from being accountable in a local authority area, Oldham, whilst his MP is from somewhere else, and the mayor comes from somewhere else entirely. And how Failsworth, because of that, actually doesn't feel represented and is overlooked. And what is the mayor willing to do to make sure that Failsworth receives its fair share of resources as other areas across Greater Manchester that are not represented favourably in the way Failsworth is not represented favourably? I'd go and ask a question. If you look at the crime in Failsworth, for instance, you see, to do with policing in Failsworth. If I was a Conservative councillor with the Conservatives' track record and its commitment to crime, I'd go and ask Burnham as to why people's council tax is going up, the mayoral precept is going up year on year, around policing, yet there is no minimum quota guarantee for policing in areas of Oldham. Because all of it goes into a central pot and then they decide where it goes appropriately. And of course, Manchester and those areas get far more than Royton or Chariton or Saddleworth, for instance. Again, my own ideas of how to solve that is a minimum quota for everyone. This is the minimum standard of policing in terms of police numbers every ward across Greater Manchester can expect, with policing hours and so on and so on. No one's challenging him for any of that. Anyone. If I was one of the Asian councillors, particularly one of those representing a high taxi driving constituency area, I would go and attack him on the clean air zone charges he tried to bring in. And I know he's trying to bring back in again in some form or another, or those links to him are, in terms of in the combined authority, trying to find a way of bringing it back in. Because I know my brother-in-law's a taxi driver, how it will affect the income that they have, and it's not a lot. They work a lot of hours, taxi drivers. I would also ask him as to why Newsom and Ridgway quit. That'd make him squirm. Remember Maggie Hurley? Jade Hughes got elected on this. Jade should ask him, how can we trust you and your reports when your own investigating team of experts have quit on you because they couldn't get to the truth? And then you hid that information that they quit on you. Excuse me. And my position is clear. If I had any say in the council, I would be going to the next council meeting in December. Remember, Burnham opened his gob on his radio show and tried to threaten us with about whether this is legally sound and not, when we voted to leave GMCA and they got round it, and they used small print and nonsense from Bogatoff, by the way, who's come out with a statement to Councillor Luke Lancaster, and Luke Lancaster hasn't even had the sense to question Bogatoff and ask him something as simple as, where have you got this position from? Where's your legal grounding for the position that you need a second vote? Remember, this is the same Bogatoff that the Conservatives have reported to Greater Manchester Police for misconduct in public office. The same Bogatov who got his job through the back door. Because Paul Entwistle gave sufficient notice for an open and transparent recruitment process to take part for the borough solicitor. But they can't, because if a borough solicitor comes in, my suspicion, my position, if an independent borough solicitor comes in, there's no guarantee that he will participate in the cover-ups. If an independent chief executive comes in, there's no guarantee that he or she will participate in the cover-ups. I'll ask Burnham about Operation Hexagon. I'll ask Burnham about Operation Sherwood and why there's been no arrests, no convictions. I'd make that mayor squirm in such a way he would dread coming back to Oldham ever again. But I'm not a councillor. Which is why I feel the opposition councillors are duty-bound to challenge Andy Burnham on behalf of the people whose doors they go and knock on, asking them to vote for them at election times, because when they ask them to vote for them, they are pledging to them that they will represent them. And what better position than to represent them? To speak to the King of the North. Not my king. But you know what I mean. So please, I urge all of you to register, and I urge you to just simply drop your councillor a message. Are they going to attend? And if they are, will they be asking a question? So there's that. Before I forget, yes, the meal has been booked for the 10th. So not this Tuesday, the Tuesday afterwards. Tuesday the 10th, I think it's £20. You can pay Anwarul and the guys directly. I get no money from it. But I like to see as many of you there as possible. Just once a year, we all get together, I think, for something nice. And we've had a year. Took a beating in the general election, but we still went to the general election. Took the council into no overall control. And then we got betrayed on, pissed on. Won in a court of law, where Greater Manchester's attempts to maliciously prosecute me collapsed. After being 3 years on bail. And we're still here. The only independent source that holds this council to scrutiny, to challenge. And they fear us. They fear us immensely. I received communication from Greater Manchester Police this week that leaves me in no doubt that they are protecting Islamists who have committed clear crimes against me, and they are refusing to prosecute them. I put something out on Twitter, X. The responses are interesting, as they always are. Share it or else. You're in bed with them. Well, actually, put yourself in my position. Sharing it doesn't get us anywhere. We need a mainstream news channel to pick up on it, because we've been sharing stuff for 6 years. GB News, to their credit, have got back to me. 2 individuals from GB News. Charlie Peters, who's got my phone number, has texted me. So thank you, Charlie, for texting me. He just texted me whilst we started this transmission. And the other person who's got in touch with me is Martin Dobney, who's a journalist who runs a programme in the afternoon. I'll put together the dossier I have of how I've reported crimes of what's been happening and how GMP have responded to me. It's all documented. You know my business. It's all documented. I bring the samosas, Tony, and the mango chutney. And my position is interview me live on TV, and I will articulate and demonstrate how Greater Manchester Police, Andy Burnham's Greater Manchester Police, has been politically infiltrated, and as a consequence of decisions senior police officers have made, I do not believe independently. They won't be making decisions to look the other way, to serious acts of criminality. They are encouraging and supporting Islamists. Extremists. And I can evidence that, and I will evidence that. So let's see if GB News run with it, or whether we've got to release all of it ourselves, which I have no issue doing. But I'm trying to amplify this. And I'm not hiding behind a fake profile. When they come and interview me, if you get that far, I won't ask for the lights to be turned off and an actor to speak pretending to be me. I'll look these journalists in the eye, and I'll look the camera in the eye. And I will share the information that I think will leave the country in no doubt as to what is taking place in Oldham. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Julie. Julie, I heard your dad's not been well. Please pass on my regards to him. I will maybe try and come and see him this week. I've not been out to see people. I know my friend Lee's not been well. I've not been out to see her because I've not been well, and I've not wanted to share what I've had because it has floored me. I'm still coughing and wheezing at night, and I don't smoke. Yeah, So because I've shared this broadcast with the Recusant tier and the Radical tier, I won't edit this down and send it out. I've emailed it to everyone on those two tiers. I hope you found value in it. I find value in sharing information with you. I try and keep it to an hour or so, is where we're at, and I think we're about an hour, I'd say. Please, if there's one takeaway from this, apart from coming and sharing a meal with us, if there's one takeaway from this, contact your counsellor and ask them if they're attending Andy Burnham's meeting, and if they are, what question they're going to ask, and then share with them what you think is important. You're a counsellor, not some other counsellor. You're a local ward counsellor. And if they don't respond, when they come knocking on your door, their party comes knocking on your door, you can tell them, can't you? And as for the pay rises, and the way they've gone about it, and what they're still hiding, and yes, I'll share that document. I'll put it up on Patreon. Don't worry about that. But what they're still hiding, it's not a good look, is it? My name is Roger May. You can support me by buying me a coffee. I think it's £3. I don't have a £13,000 basic allowance. I rely on the generosity of ordinary members of the public. You can buy me a coffee for £3 should you wish to do so. Take out a subscription to Red Wall and the Rabble, which is what I'd prefer if you're not subscribed. And at the very least, sign up to Patreon. It's £1 a month, where I share all of my updates. Have a very, very good evening.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.